The moment that still replays in my head happened right in the middle of Christmas dinner, with everyone watching. My fiancé's father leaned back in his chair, took a sip of wine, looked straight at me, and said, I still don't understand why my son is marrying street trash. The entire table went silent. Forks stopped moving, conversations died instantly, and every single pair of eyes turned toward me. I remember feeling like the air had been sucked out of the room. My fiancé looked stunned. His mother gasped quietly. And his father, he just smirked like he'd said something completely normal. I sat there frozen for a second, my heart pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. And the worst part? He thought I was just going to sit there and take it. But I didn't. What happened next changed the entire night. And honestly, it might have changed the rest of my life too. So tell me honestly, if someone insulted you like that in front of an entire family on Christmas night, would you stay quiet or would you fight back? To understand why that moment mattered so much, I have to go back a few years. I grew up in a small apartment on the edge of town with my mom. My dad left when I was 6, and it was always just the two of us after that. My mom worked 2 jobs most of my childhood. She cleaned offices at night and worked as a cashier during the day. We didn't have much, but she always made sure I had what I needed. She used to tell me that money wasn't what made someone valuable. It was their character. At the time, I didn't realize how much those words would stick with me. School wasn't always easy for me either. Kids could be cruel about my clothes or the fact that I brought the same lunch every day. But I worked hard. I studied constantly, got good grades, and eventually earned a scholarship to a really good university. That's where I met Daniel. Daniel came from a completely different world. His family was wealthy. Not just comfortable, wealthy. His father owned a chain of construction companies across the state, and their house looked like something out of a movie. The first time Daniel invited me over, I remember standing in their driveway staring at the place like I'd taken a wrong turn into some celebrity neighborhood. Huge windows, a massive front lawn, even a fountain in the middle of the driveway circle. I almost turned around and left that day because I felt so out of place. But Daniel wasn't like his family, at least not at first. He was kind, funny, and surprisingly down to earth. We met in a business class and started studying together, which turned into coffee, which turned into dates, and before long we were inseparable. For the first year of our relationship, I barely saw his parents. They lived in another city and traveled a lot. Daniel always brushed off the idea of introducing me to them, saying things like, "They're complicated," or "Trust me, you're not missing much." But eventually the day came when I had to meet them. It was during summer break when Daniel invited me to stay with his family for a weekend. I remember spending hours trying to figure out what to wear. Nothing in my closet felt fancy enough. When we arrived at the house, his mother greeted us politely but with this distant smile, like she was evaluating me the entire time. His father barely looked up from his phone when Daniel introduced me. He just gave a quick nod and said, "Nice to meet you." That was it. At first I tried not to think too much about it. Not everyone is warm right away, right? But over the years, I started noticing little things. Comments that sounded polite on the surface, but had a sting underneath. His mother would ask questions like, "So what do your parents do?" Even though she already knew the answer, his father would joke about how Daniel had always dated girls from good families before. Once, during a dinner, he asked me if I found their house intimidating. When I laughed awkwardly and said it was beautiful, he replied, "Yes, well, not everyone is used to this kind of lifestyle." Things like that. Small comments that made me feel like I was being measured and always coming up short. Daniel always told me not to take it personally. He'd say his dad was just old-fashioned and blunt. I tried to believe him because I loved Daniel. And for the most part, our relationship was really good. After we both graduated, I got a job at a marketing firm, and Daniel started working at one of his father's companies. 2 years later, he proposed to me during a weekend trip by the lake. It was one of the happiest moments of my life. I genuinely believed everything was falling into place. When we announced the engagement to his parents, his mother forced a smile and hugged me. His father just stared at the ring on my finger and said, "Well, Daniel, that's certainly a decision." I laughed it off at the time, but something about the way he said it stuck with me. Fast forward to the Christmas dinner that changed everything. Daniel insisted we spend the holiday with his family that year. He said it was important to start building stronger bonds before the wedding. I agreed because I wanted things to work. I truly did. When we arrived at the house, everything looked perfect on the surface. The house was decorated beautifully, lights everywhere, a huge Christmas tree in the living room, the smell of roasted turkey filling the air. His mother greeted us with her usual polite smile, and his father shook Daniel's hand before giving me a short nod. Dinner started off normally enough. There were about 8 people at the table, including Daniel's sister and her husband. Everyone was chatting about work, travel plans, and holiday traditions. I tried to participate in the conversation, but I mostly just listened. Then his father started asking me questions. At first they seemed harmless. He asked about my job, my salary, where my mom lived. But the tone of his voice felt different. Like he wasn't just asking out of curiosity. It felt like an interrogation. Then came the moment I'll never forget. Someone mentioned wedding plans, and his father leaned back in his chair and looked straight at me. He asked, "So tell me something honestly. Do you really think you'll fit into this family?" The question caught me off guard. I tried to laugh it off and said something like, "I hope so." That's when he took a sip of his wine and said the words that froze the entire room. "I still don't understand why my son is marrying street trash." Everything went silent, and right there, in that moment, I had a choice to make. Before I tell you what I did next, I want to ask you something. If you were sitting at that table, surrounded by people who thought they were better than you, and someone insulted you like that in front of everyone, what would you do? Would you stay quiet to keep the peace? Would you walk away? Or would you say something back? Because I promise you, what happened next is something his father definitely didn't expect. For a second, I just stared at him. I could feel the heat rising in my face. My first instinct was to stand up and leave. But then I thought about my mom. I thought about all the nights she came home exhausted from work, but still managed to cook dinner and help me with homework. I thought about how hard she fought to give me opportunities she never had. And suddenly, the idea of letting this man insult where I came from felt completely wrong. So I put my fork down slowly and looked directly at him. I said very calmly, "You're right. I didn't grow up with money. My mom cleaned offices so I could go to school. I worked 3 jobs in college to graduate without debt. And today I have a career I'm proud of. If that makes me street trash to you, then I guess I'm the most successful piece of street trash you've ever met." The room was completely silent again. Then I added something that made his face turn bright red. I said, "But the difference between you and me is that I know where I came from. And I'm proud of it. You have all the money in the world, but somehow you still managed to raise a son who fell in love with someone you think is beneath him." Daniel's sister actually covered her mouth, trying not to laugh. His father slammed his hand on the table and started to say something, but Daniel cut him off. For the first time since I'd known him, Daniel stood up to his father. He said, "Dad, that was completely out of line. You owe her an apology." His father refused, of course. He muttered something about respect and family reputation. But by that point, the damage was done. Dinner ended early, and Daniel and I left shortly after. The ride home was quiet at first, but then Daniel apologized over and over again. He told me he was ashamed of what his father said and that he should have defended me sooner in the past when those smaller comments happened. The aftermath was messy. His father refused to speak to me for months. His mother tried to smooth things over, but it was clear the tension was still there. But something surprising happened too. Daniel changed. He stopped brushing off his father's behavior and started setting real boundaries. Eventually, even his sister told me, privately, that someone needed to stand up to their dad years ago. As for me, I don't regret what I said that night for a single second. Sometimes people think staying quiet is the polite thing to do, but silence can also mean accepting disrespect. In the end, that Christmas dinner taught me something important. Your worth isn't defined by where you come from or how much money your family has. It's defined by your character and the way you treat people. So if you made it this far into the story, I'm really curious to know what you think. Was I wrong for standing up to him the way I did? Or would you have done the same thing? If you were on my side, make sure to like this video. And if you enjoy hearing stories like this one, hit that subscribe button because there are plenty more unbelievable stories coming. And seriously, I want to hear your thoughts on this whole mess. So drop a comment below and tell me what you would have done in my place. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you all in the next story.